All right. Take it away.
Hey everybody, welcome to the community call. Who do we got on the line here? We've got me and Terry and Dan Shields and Jim Pick. Woohoo! All right, sweet. So I don't really have much of an agenda today. Everything is moving along rather nicely. All of our OKRs are on track to be taken care of. Portia isn't here to talk about some of the IPFS side of stuff, but why don't we get a quick update on Proto School from you, Terry, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So we have a new request in for a chapter in Bangalore, so we need to get a repo set up for that. I don't think we've had new chapters go live this week, but we have folks in a number of places working on setting them up. And there's a new Berlin meetup coming up in early March, I think, that Portia is hosting. The newest thing that went live this week in terms of Proto School is if you go in the organizing repo now, which is meant for our chapter organizers, instead of just having chapter setup instructions, there's also a resources document, which is meant for all the stuff you might need after you've set up your chapter. So things, tips for setting up events, how to order stickers, etc. But not too much. I was at FOSDEM this weekend and gave a little lightning talk, sharing the Proto School idea with some folks there who were interested in IPFS. So hopefully that will generate some more chapter organizers. And then next up on my list, as I realize I say frequently, I'm working on building out a lesson to teach the IPFS file API. I think that's the summary on my end.
Very cool, very cool. Over last weekend, I did a little side project with JS IPFS, pushing around some files, and it was really kind of enlightening. There's a lot of sort of rough edges that we need to sand down. So I have on my to-do list to do a very long write-up of what that experience was like and sort of the takeaways from it. Yeah, that's the main kind of update that I have. Other than that, I'm just doing more and more metrics work, looking at all of our sort of org level metrics and then trying to figure out a way to do metrics analysis over all of GitHub's archive data. Cool. All right. At this point, I guess we can just open it up as sort of like a office hours. So Dan, Jim, you got anything you want to ask us or bring up, discuss?
Sure, I might throw in something. So I just officially got an IPFS meetup started up here through you guys, which is awesome, and some swag, which I'm very excited to be able to pass around here at the upcoming event that I've been grinding on, which is Ethereum Denver. And so I'll be announcing at least one IPFS related meetup in the build up to that event. And I'll be definitely doing some promotion there. So I'm really excited to see if we can get some people thinking about distributed systems more than just blockchain tech in general. So that's pretty exciting so far. There's definitely some interest from outside of the normal communities that I run in the blockchain circles around here, which is great. And I'm waiting on Proto School stickers. That'll be awesome. And then I guess in terms of an event, maybe that's where I can get your guys' input on is how can I best highlight Proto School more than just like I guess what I did last time was effectively an office hours for Proto School. It could be something as simple as that to introduce people to some of the IPFS tooling, but something around the lines of maybe if you're going to a hackathon specifically for something around Ethereum, are there good tools in which we could point them to that would be really useful to have in your tool belt?
That's an interesting question. I think that like what we sort of envisioned was that eventually the Proto School materials would get to a place where you would want to do a sort of a more structured tutorial following through the materials. with that particular audience though, people that are like already doing Ethereum blockchain stuff, I don't know how interested they'll be in a full browser tutorial. So you may just want to sort of point them at like, oh, here are the resources to poke at. But I'm not sure. Maybe they would be interested in just walking through the whole sort of the whole workflow. I think that once we have the file one up too, like that'll be a big change, because at the end of the file tutorial, you will like have uploaded a new file and you can kind of see how in a browser you can create an application that throws the file. But then that file CID is now just available in the decentralized network. And so if you want to do transactions against it in your Ethereum blockchain, like you can actually just pull that out of IPFS, like in JS IPFS or in Go IPFS or wherever. Like in fact, you could probably just pull it out by CID if you had other resolution mechanisms. So I think like that is probably like the main thing that you'll want to point people out once we have it ready, which is, you know, it's in progress right now. It should be done next quarter. Yeah.
Do we have a rough ETA on when I might be able to get that out and issued for the file API?
I don't know anything beyond the end of the quarter.
Remind me when your event is.
So all next week we've got all kinds of things going on. But by next weekend is when I'd like to be able to host at least one event around Proto School, or at least point to some good tutorials around IPFS in general. Yeah.
So the file API tutorial won't be ready for that. Okay. The tutorials that will exist are the ones that you see there today. Yeah. So whether it's sharing, whether you think that's appropriate for that audience, if it's different from the folks who came to your last event and they want to work through that, or if you want to just introduce the concept of Proto School. I think my slide deck from just introducing what Proto School is and inviting people. I don't know if you have many people from outside of Denver that come where it would actually build chapters in other places. I think there's a folder called presentations in the organizing repo that has the deck from that.
Perfect. No, that's great. Yeah, I can pick up from there. And you're right. Maybe the idea is simply seeding some other communities, because we will have a global audience here for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll plan on that, and I'll report back not next week, but the week after.
Okay.
Cool. So Dan, like, what is the makeup of the audience? Are they like fairly new to blockchain stuff, or are they actually like already doing some stuff in Ethereum and fairly familiar with it?
It really depends. So last year was the first and biggest event, like in this space, the whole Ethereum hackathon thing here. We had like 700 people, and I think that the demographic was 60 to 70% had never written a line of Solidity in their life. So they might have had some other experience, but almost no one had any real like Ethereum dev under their belt. So this year, my guess is that that's going to be maybe inverted. There are a lot more experienced people in general, but we're really trying to cater also to non-technical people as well. But out of that technical demographic, absolutely, I think a lot of people, and in the Ethereum circles that I talk with, they're talking about IPFS for doing file storage distributedly, or potentially integrating with Swarm. But that's kind of a toss-up right now. I tend to favor what we're up to. But.
Yeah, and last time I don't know where they're at in the development, but I think Swarm may end up using CIDs like the spec for their own internal data stuff as well. So that'll be really, really nice. That'll be some nice parity there.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I'm just sort of Googling around for existing like Solidity. Yeah, here we go. So there are a couple different tutorials just online of like using Solidity with IPFS. You know, and it's always just like, oh yeah, you know, you give it the IPFS hash, you give it the IPFS hash.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think probably just like we just need to. There's some pretty easy base documentation for both JS IPFS and regular IPFS on here's how you add a file and then get that hash out of it. I think that's probably like the missing component in some of these tutorials that are already there. So yeah, I mean, I know that just the actual JS IPFS API documentation for files has been updated. And so it's actually quite a bit better than it was before. There's a really good distinction there between MFS and the regular file API in particular. yeah, let me look something up real quick.
Okay. Maybe it would be best if you wouldn't mind dropping that in the notes for today, and I can go back and review some of that.
Sure. Yeah, here's the general IPFS docs too. Let me find that link. Dink, dink. Oh, no, that's not the link. Sorry. I need to go into the calendar events to find the link. People love it when I talk out loud and think out loud on calls. Okay. So, yeah, we'll put some different documentation links in there. I think like this is an interesting use case though. I would like to afterwards. I'm curious to know what the knowledge gaps were and what people had a hard time kind of understanding, so that we can maybe create better documentation that is specifically targeted at Ethereum users and just say like, here is exactly, the things that you are going to care about and need to learn in order to use IPFS with Ethereum.
Right. And to be honest, I haven't done much digging myself, but my guess notionally, I don't know if you're familiar with truffle boxes, but something along those lines. So plug and play, it just has a template for a really good use case, all outlined for IPFS integration.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, I can't open the notes for some reason. I'll put the link in the chat, and hopefully somebody who can get the notes open can do that. I don't know why it's not opening on my thing for some reason.
No worries.
Yeah, so the docs.ipfs.io is sort of great high-level documentation just about what IPFS is, and then depending on if they're looking at the JavaScript side or the Go side, there are different sort of API pointers that we can do.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll dig into that here shortly and get something up on the calendar. And in terms of broadcasting and getting people more so stoked about the community at large in general, Protoschool is definitely a place to point them. But is there anything else like the IPFS community repo, for instance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, in there, I think we even have a thread somewhere about building truffle boxes for this stuff specifically.
There you go.
So, yeah, cool.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate the help.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, Jim. Anything today?
Not a whole lot. I'm just sort of thinking forward to trying to figure out how to build some better onboarding stuff for Peerbase. I've mostly been working on driving the bugs out of it, and it's coming along. It's actually getting pretty stable. So I know the existing README material and examples are really quite terrible for learning it. So I'm thinking of what would a simpler examples in onboarding look like. I'm sort of thinking maybe like a home automation type example might be sort of a cool one to start with for a beginner. Where it's like, imagine you want to flip on lights on and off in your house from multiple devices. And,
Interesting.
So I actually want to experiment. I might be able to stick the stuff in something like a React Native app with Expo.io or something, and that might be a really cool way of showing. I think that this stuff really shines on multiple devices for collaboration. For like especially for like somebody's very first intro to like why would you want to use a CRDT conflict-free replicated data type, and it's primarily for syncing between devices and multiple users. Of course, if you're doing a tutorial, you don't have multiple users to interact with, so it's sort of I find that sort of like it's hard to do a collaboration tutorial where you have to imagine that you're collaborating with another version of yourself or something like. I've been playing around with some HTML game frameworks as well, so that might be sort of fun to do. Like, here's how you make a multi-user game, but again, you still have that same problem where it's only one person doing the tutorial. So it's hard to make a multi-user game when you're only one person. But
yeah, we've thought a couple times about like what we could do in terms of in a tutorial, then doing some kind of pop out where it would open another tab, and then that other tab would also be doing something to show like maybe file transfer or to show possibly like collaboration. But again, like with the CRDT stuff, it's like you only really see the value when you have two people editing at exactly the same time. It has to be at the same time. And so if you're flipping between the tabs, it's not really at the same time.
Yeah. One idea I had was like I could like code up some like a bot that sort of sits there and acts as one side of the conversation, and then you can code the other side of the bot. In which case, the game thing might actually make a lot of sense, right? Like code up a bot on your end, or just code up an interface where you can like interface, do something as part of an existing sort of like a game, but.
So a lot of like the early DAT and even some of the early WebTorrent stuff, they had some really cool demos around chat, if I recall. Maybe that was just WebTorrent though in Pharos, but there was some really, really cool chat demos that were happening with all the new real-time stuff. And they seem to be pretty popular. People really into them. So
yeah, I built a chat version with the project I did last year called Hypermerge, which is based on the CRDT. The problem with chat is it's not really very CRDT like. There's not really a whole lot of merging in chat. It's just sort of like each person is typing their own stream and your log of messages. You just sort of merge them together in time. So it's not like a lot of conflicts that can sort of happen. Like you're just sort of appending messages to a log. So it's
what about really moderation though? Like
yeah, we just start adding features on. I think it's nice, but
yeah, like I feel like what a lot of this has come up quite a bit actually in just the decentralized web talking in general, which is like, what do you do about moderation? What do you do about deletes? Stuff like that. I think like a demo that showed how you would do collaborative moderation with decentralized data structures would actually be pretty cool and powerful.
Yeah. There's a lot like there's a lot of like sort of mathy sort of concepts involved. It's like like CRDTs are built on this idea of partial order, and then you only see the full order everything when everybody's synced up and merged together. And I think that stuff's really interesting, but it's probably not what you want to drop on somebody like right at the beginning. I think there's like converging a bunch of data together, and then there's the idea like building consensus things on top, which is more of a blockchain type of thing. So there's a lot of like concepts to drop on somebody right at first. So that's why I sort of the one that sort of came to mind is just like the home automation one. It's like, hey, can I turn the light bulb on in my living room? Like,
yeah.
And that's sort of like where you're modifying a state, and it's like on or off. So that's really easy to understand.
So. Awesome.
So, yeah. I'm not doing much on it right now, so it's going to be in the upcoming weeks. So.
Right.
And then if I do this, I'd probably do it standalone, and then try to parts of it with an eye that like maybe some of it could work into the proto school curriculum at some point. But
yeah, that'd be cool. Okay, cool. Well, that's it for my agenda today. Pretty loose. Terry, anything else before we wrap up?
Not that occurs to me while I'm unmuted either.
Cool. One thing is that so we have a community hack week next week with me and Portia and Terry, and I think one thing we're going to poke at is possibly moving to ViewPress from just a regular View app to a ViewPress app. So that if you're watching the code in the Proto School repo, that'll be kind of fun to watch. Cool.
Very cool. Right. I was going to say, I really like that idea. If we can make it static and host the whole site on IPFS, that would be awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
I mean, technically we're currently static and we can host it on IPFS. That's all possible now. But but just the URLs don't matter right now. Like like they all hit the same resource. And so just for like, Googleability and like SEO and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot nicer.
Right. Well, a little bit of both maybe.
Mm-hmm. But I think mainly, like, if you look at the way that ViewPress works, it's sort of inverted from our current workflow, where like we have these markdown files that then get imported into components of like a view component and then outputted into a page. And that's kind of like annoying as an author, where most of what you're doing is this markdown and then you're embedding a few pieces basically. So yeah, ViewPress would just allow us to really like make these components and then embed them into the markdown. So it's like inverted. It would be just a lot nicer, I think.
Cool.
And it would be a lot easier to like dynamically build some of the lists that we have, which right now we actually have to like manually update the list of tutorials and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's more that we haven't built the component yet, as far as I can tell, but.
Well, there isn't a great way though in a component to pull in a list from the file system of like the open files, like from what I've seen, because if you do it in client-side JavaScript, like the file system doesn't technically exist. And so you would have to do it as some kind of a build step and then pass it through. Whereas like in ViewPress, every template or every component can just get a list of all of the files that are in the current application. That's basically baked in. So yeah, that would just be like a lot easier. Cool. Okay, awesome. Let's wrap it up. Good talk, everybody. Have a nice weekend, and yeah, see you all next week. Bye.
Sounds good. Thanks.